morning, happy Sabbath.
Happy Sabbath. Yeah. No.
I thought it was here, I thought I would use it, but I guess not. Oh, that's okay. I know most of you, but some of you I don't know. So I'm going to just introduce myself real quick for those of you who think I might have rolled off the street through the snow here today. My name is Kyle Pepple. I'm 50 years old. I'm an old man and I have no problem with that. I just am who I am. So the kids at school make fun of me, as do my daughters, but that's okay. I can handle it. I teach at Cascade Christian Academy. I'm the high school math and Bible teacher. I teach 11-12 Bible, amongst many other duties at a small Christian private Adventist school. There's a lot of hats that you fill there, and so I fill a lot of those, but they hired me to be a math teacher, so I teach 8th grade math and up and high school Bible. And the Lord has blessed me to be in a position where hopefully I can have a positive Christian influence on the students and staff in that environment. So we just all hope that God can use us in our own little domains, in our own little worlds, to spread the gospel and to just share His love with those around us. So I just hope that God uses me to that end. Let's just have a word of prayer here quickly. Father in heaven, Lord, let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart, Lord, be acceptable in your sight. In Jesus' name, amen. As you know, the title of my sermon is Where Are You Headed? And this is basically my testimony. And the scripture, if you remember, was, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." Now, gods can be in numerous different avenues, numerous different directions, can come in all. What might be a God that I consider might not be a God that you consider. And so I had a God in my life growing up, and I didn't even realize that it was a God. The gods that we might think of today out there might be entertainment, maybe Facebook for some of you, maybe our iPhones or our iPads or technology or music, or there's all different types of gods out there that Satan puts in front of us, and we just need to be conscious and aware of all of these deceptions and things that God sees and can use for good, but Satan wants to put them in front of us to distract us from serving the one true Creator God. And that's who we serve, amen? Amen. He is the Creator of the universe, and we want to serve Him only. Yes, we have all these other avenues, we have all these other devices and other things that are in our world, but we don't want to be of those things. We don't want to worship those things. We want to worship the one true God and follow Him with all of our heart, soul, and mind. As I was growing up, my God was sports. I grew up in a world that was very different than most Seventh-day Adventists are raised in. Now, some of you may have been raised Seventh-day Adventists, maybe third, fourth generation Seventh-day Adventists. Some of you might just be visiting the church today for the first time. Okay? But we all have a different story, right? We all have a different story. Yeah. And I grew up in a world where I didn't even know what a Seventh-day Adventist was. Okay? Didn't even know what it was. When Janelle first told me, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist, I had no idea even what that meant. But the world I grew up in was a world of sports. And it was very different than most Adventists, in an environment that most Adventists grow up in. My dad was a basketball coach. My dad coached for 52 years in the state of Washington. The last 40 at Mercer Island High School. He was a high school basketball coach. He is the all-time winningest high school basketball coach in the state of Washington. He's won 952 games. That is the environment I grew up in. My earliest memories of my sports background was me sitting in a Mercer Island basketball shirt underneath the scorer's bench, watching the high school kids come in and check into the game. That's what I remember. Every Tuesday night, every Friday night, I was in a gym. Every Saturday morning, I was in a gym. Every afternoon, I was in my backyard shooting baskets. And then when soccer season rolled around, I was kicking a soccer ball. And then when baseball season rolled around, I was hitting a baseball. When it was time to go out and play tennis, I did that. My life revolved around a ball. Sports. That was my God. That's all I knew. That's what my world was surrounded with. It was our number one priority. It was the family get-together. Some families get together for church. Some people's families get together for Thanksgiving or Christmas or holidays or birthdays. My family got together numerous times, every week, every year, for games. We went to games packed with people. And let me tell you something. It wasn't low intensity. Okay? We're talking state championships. We're talking national championships. We're talking, I've been to Australia playing basketball. I've been to Texas. I've been to Chicago. I've been to everywhere. I played basketball in college. My whole world revolved around sports. My whole world revolved around sports. My dad is inducted into Hall of Fames. More than I can even name. National Basketball Hall of Fames, Washington State Hall of Fames. He's in the National Basketball Memorial Museum back in Springfield, Massachusetts. So this was my world. It's all I knew. It was my God. Every Saturday morning growing up, my dad started a program called Little Dribblers. I didn't go to church on Saturday mornings. I was in a gym dribbling basketballs with all of my friends. I went to college and played basketball. Played in state championship basketball games. Got a basketball scholarship. Coached in basketball after I got out of college. Okay? It was who I was. I really didn't have another perspective. That was my life, was basketball. So when I talk about have no other gods before you, some of you might be thinking, that is the oddest thing I've ever heard of. But that was my life. That was my God. That is how I was raised. I knew nothing else. And that was where my heart was. So I have a question for you. Where is your heart at? What takes up the time in your life? What takes time away from your time spending with God? Because I know what it was in my life. I know what it was. And it was sports. And to this day, my wife will tell you, sports is a huge draw for me. It's still in my blood. It's still in my heart. And I have to put up barriers. I have to consciously be aware of it. I have to consciously shut it down. We don't have TV at our house because of me. Not because it's a problem for Faith and Selah and Mom, but because television is a problem for me. Because what would Dad want to do in the middle of the week? I'd want to watch a Duke, North Carolina basketball game. Or I'd want to watch a football game. Or I'd want to... Because that's still in my blood. It still is there. Even though I've been able to shed a lot of the skin that built up on me, it's still there. So I still have to push it away. Growing up, we basically had two religions in my house. My mom was Catholic. My dad was a basketball coach. And there really was no conflict. Mom loved going to basketball games, and Dad let Mom go to church. And Dad let Mom take the kids and be raised little good Catholic boys and girls. That's what we were. We just went to church and went to CCD and did what we were supposed to do, and then we went and played sports. And so it was a happy home. I'm blessed with the upbringing I had. My mom and dad raised me with love. To this day, we get together for holidays. I was blessed with the family that I was raised in. But those were our two religions. It was Catholic and it was basketball. My dad really had no need for religion because his religion was basketball. My mom was Catholic. I knew God. I knew who God was, but I never had a relationship with Jesus. I did all that I was supposed to do. We went to church every week. I went to CCD on Wednesdays. I was confirmed and I was baptized, and I did exactly what I was supposed to do, but looking at the clock and couldn't wait to get out of there so I could go watch a game or play a sport or do something else. I never read the Bible. We never had family worship. We celebrated holidays, but there was no personal relationship with God other than going to church and doing what we were supposed to do. So with that being said, you can probably imagine what happened to me once I got to college. I had no foundation, no religious foundation to fall back on. The only reason I was Catholic was because my mom was Catholic. I had no personal relationship on my own. My best friend was Jewish. The reason he was Jewish is because his mom and dad were Jewish. Okay? We all know him. I challenge you parents, please raise your kids to have their own personal relationship with Jesus. That is the only way it's going to stick. That is the only way it's going to stick. We can't just assume because we bring them to church or that we do all the things we're supposed to do that's going to stick, because I know it doesn't. The fastest thing I wanted to do was get away from church when I got of age. So as soon as I went to college, I blew the coop, so to speak. It wasn't my religion, it was my mom's. It doesn't matter what religion you are. The question is what is your relationship with Jesus Christ? That's all that matters. What is your relationship with Jesus Christ? My relationship at that point in time was an intellectual one. I knew who God was. I knew about Jesus. I knew kind of some things, but there was no heartfelt. There was nothing in my heart that made it stick. By my standards at this point in time, I was a good person. I was nice. I didn't steal. I didn't lie. Well, I lied a little bit. But it's one of those things where I had a dark side, but I didn't even know I had a dark side. When I was in college, even before in high school, I did the things that kids are not supposed to do. And me and my friends, we partied. And we found the places to go. And when you're in that world, it doesn't take long to find people of like mind. We might think, oh, well, no, they don't do it. Oh, they don't. Let me enlighten you. You can find whatever you're looking for, wherever you're at. And I found in college what I wanted to find, which were people of like mind, didn't really have a relationship with God, and wanted to just hang out and party. And actually that started when I was 15 years old. And in my house it was kind of an unwritten rule. We didn't really have, we never really talked about it. But it was kind of an unwritten rule that, oh yeah, you don't do this and you don't do that and you don't do this. And again, I would encourage parents, sit down and communicate about these things with your kids. Explain to them what's out there. It's real. It's out there. And let me tell you, Satan has a hold of that world, and he wants to suck as many people into it as possible. I really didn't have a moral standard but I thought I was a good person. As long as I was a nice person and I didn't hurt anybody, I was okay. And this lifestyle I led continued into my 20s. I was headed in the wrong direction and I didn't even know it. Didn't have any idea. But at that point in time, God had other plans for me.
Amen.
And luckily, when I was on the wrong side of the tracks, my current wife Janelle wasn't on the right side of the tracks either. She wasn't as far off the tracks as I was, but she wasn't living to the standards she knew and was raised by. And that was the only hope I had. God somehow put us together, and things started to change. In the spiritual state I was in, and with the lifestyle that I was living, she should have had nothing to do with me. She should have ran far, and ran fast. But God had other plans. If my daughters wanted to go date somebody like me at that point in time, I would tell them absolutely not. Okay? But parents, pray for your kids. That meant so much today, praying for Anna Marie, because prayers work. Prayers work. And so we want to keep all of our children in God's hands. We met at a Christmas party, and her best friend was dating my best friend, and all of a sudden said, hey, we should get them together. And we met, and for all the right reasons, I didn't get a date for 9 months. So she was smart for a while, and then I finally broke her down. We were both living in the Seattle area at the time. She told me, oh, I'm seeing somebody else, and I said, well, so? I want to go out with you. And she's like, no, I don't date more than one person at a time. I can respect that. Unfortunately, I was on the wrong side of the fence at that point in time. So there was a respect level there I had for her because she had certain standards that she didn't cross. And so I said, maybe I want to explore this a little more. Our first date was August 17th, 1989. And within 2 weeks, I knew I was going to marry her. And she obviously was a little more suspicious than I was. She wasn't quite on the same path that I was, and rightly so. She didn't want to tell me that she was a Seventh-day Adventist. She knew that I was raised Catholic, but she didn't want to say that she was a Seventh-day Adventist. But I didn't really care. I didn't care what she was. I just knew I wanted to marry her. We started dating, and at that point in time, again, we weren't living up to solid Christian standards and principles, and we moved in together, and shortly thereafter, her brother moved in with us. And at that point in time, her and Garth and Janelle started talking about spiritual things. And we go back to that verse, train up a child in the way they should go, and they will not depart from it. The upbringing that Janelle and Garth had spurred interest and conversation in me. They started talking about spiritual things. God is supposed to be on our hearts. God is supposed to be on our lips. Speaking about Jesus should be what we're all about. We have no idea when we have conversations with other people, when we have conversations with family members, people at the store, people at work, we have no idea who is listening and what seeds are being planted. Seeds were being planted in my heart, and I didn't even know it. They were talking about spiritual things, and I started becoming interested. At this point in time, I started asking questions. what's a Seventh-day Adventist? Why are you a Seventh-day Adventist? There's like 10,000 different Christian beliefs. Why are you a Seventh-day Adventist? So I was asking questions. This conversation Garth and Janelle were having spurred God in my heart and God in my mind to start asking questions. And that one question I asked her is, why are you a Seventh-day Adventist? The thing that turned my heart and the thing that turned my mind around was, she told me, because I've studied it for myself. Because I've learned it for myself. Because I've read it for myself. And that hit home for me. Because I go back to my upbringing. Why was I a Catholic? I was Catholic because my mom was a Catholic. And out of respect for my mom, that's what I was. But did I have a solid foundation? I didn't have a solid foundation to stand on. And that spurred me into, wow, maybe I should look into this a little bit more. And so this conversation, as Janelle and Garth kept talking and I kept asking questions, the concept of heaven was always something in the back of my mind that always intrigued me and I wanted to learn more about. We don't know what biblical principle is going to spur somebody's interest. We don't know what conversation somebody's listening to that might spur them into asking a question or to picking up their Bible or to, we have no idea. But God wants us to have Him on our lips. He wants us to have Him on our hearts. He wants Him to be first out of our mouth so that we can plant those seeds with people. I started reading the Bible. I was 25 years old and I had been in the world's lifestyle for 10 years. The clubs, the rock concerts, the sports, the entertainment, you name it, and I was a part of it. And then I started reading the Bible. And Janelle asked her grandma, Grandma, Kyle's interested in spiritual things. What should I do? And there's a little ministry called Amazing Facts. I don't know if any of you are aware of Amazing Facts. But back in the early 2000s, there was a preacher called Joe Cruz. Anybody know who Joe Cruz was? If anybody's ever heard or read anything from Joe Cruz, he pulls no punches. It is straight, unadulterated truth. And at that point in time, that's what I needed. That is what I needed, was straight biblical truth. We started Bible studies. We were still in the Seattle area. We went to the Green Lake Church and we started doing Bible studies. I was baptized in February of 2003.
No, not 2009.
1993, I'm sorry.
It's always in the 90s.
1993. And at that point in time, my life was changing. Obviously, that's what God does in our lives. When we start putting God into our minds, when we start reading about God, when we start studying about God, when we start praying about God, our desires change. Not from the outside, they start changing from the inside out. That is the sanctification process. Drawing so close to Jesus that He starts changing what's on the inside so that our outside behavior starts changing. I started not having any desire to go to the places I used to go to. When me and my friends would go on boys' weekend, you can probably imagine what that was about. When we were right out of college, I started being the designated driver. I stopped establishing the same places that they wanted to go to. And so my desires started changing. In addition to that, my desires of what I wanted to listen to started to change. Not because I wanted to change all these things so I could be saved. Jesus was changing me from the inside out. My desires for those things went away. I stopped going to rock concerts. I stopped going to the clubs. But it's because God was changing me from the inside out. I was working for a man named Seth at that point in time. And it's a job I took out of college, and I was managing a burglar and fire alarm company. And the music I started listening to at work started changing from the music that I used to change to Christian music. Now, is that same Christian music what I'm listening to today? No, it's probably different than what I'm listening to today, because God changes us over time, doesn't He? It just doesn't happen overnight. God changes us over time. And so Seth, my boss, at that point in time, we started clashing. We started having some problems. And it got to be so unbearable that I had to quit. And it was spurred because of my relationship with Christ, because I was changing. I couldn't handle it anymore. I couldn't handle how he treated people and how his behavior anymore. And I couldn't deal with those things anymore, so I had to walk away. So I started my own company at that point in time. And he found out I started a company. Well, I had signed what's called a non-compete clause when I was 22 years old. When I got out of college, and you're 22 years old and you have no idea what that means. I soon found out what that meant 5 years later.
Were you competing?
In his mind, I was competing. I was competing with him, but it didn't affect him one way or the other. And so, once he found that out with the personality that he had, he sued me. And so, I was in the middle of starting a family with Janelle. We had bought a house. We were, at that point in time, we were trying to keep up with the Joneses. Not the literal Joneses, the figurative Joneses. And so, but we were still trying to get our priorities straight in terms of what was important and what wasn't important. So here, an ex-boss sues me, and he wants to rake me over the coals. So, a friend of mine, my best friend, who also knew him, we settled out of court. Now, he had way more money than, he would have loved to have just dragged it on in court for a couple of years and had me hire attorneys and but it wasn't worth it to me. So we settled out of court. What that did was, it made us sell our house. It made me have to get a new job. Our priorities changed in a hurry. From having a nice house to moving into an apartment because of this settlement I had to. And do you think I was happy about that at that point in time? Was not happy. I was angry. I was vengeful. I wanted something to happen. And so I had this anger built up inside of me, and it was eating away at me. It really was. Do any of you have anything that is eating you up? Maybe it's a work situation or a coworker or a family member or what I had to do to free myself from that attitude and that spirit within me was I had to give it to God. I had to say, God, I can't deal with this anymore. And I gave it to God. I said, God, I forgive Seth. He doesn't know what he's doing. Until I did that, it was eating me up. I gave it to God, and let me tell you, as soon as I did that, there was freedom. There was peace. I didn't have to deal with it anymore. God was now dealing with it. I forgave him. I didn't have an issue with him anymore. And you know what's amazing? I talked to him 2 weeks ago. But even before that, 2 years after that settlement, I had to pay him over a 1-year period. And it made us sell our house. 2 years after I ended up paying him off, he called me on the phone. And he said, let's meet for lunch. And I said, okay, no problem. I didn't have any animosity towards him. I didn't have any anger towards him. No problem, Seth. Let's get together. He wrote a check and gave me every dime back. And I told him, I said, Seth, you don't have to do that for me. I've forgiven you. I'm over it. There's no problem anymore. And he said, I have to do this for me. Because he knew he had made a wrong. And so he wrote that check back to me. And to this day, we're friends. When we go back to Mercer Island, we'll stop in and see him. I talked to him on the phone 2 weeks ago. And no, we don't live the same lifestyle. No, we don't agree on all points. But you know what? We get along. And that's only because of God. That's only because of God. After I got baptized in 1993, Janelle and I didn't join a church right away. We were kind of doing the home church thing, and we were in some independent ministries, and we were told at one point in time that we had the most critical spirit that pastor had ever seen. We were like, critical spirit? What? Again, we didn't see it. We didn't know where our hearts were, but other people noticed it in us. Critical of the church. Critical of this, critical of that. And I was a new Christian. I was a baby Christian. I didn't know how to handle that. I probably turned my family off and was too abrasive and too... I was just a baby Christian. I just wanted everybody to know the truth. But God works with us over time, doesn't He? God works with us over time. We ended up joining the Redmond Church in 1995. That was a church plant in 1995, and met some beautiful people there and had a great experience. But basketball was still a huge part of my life at that point in time. Some of the things I was able to do away with. Some of the things were obvious that God just took away. Oh, you don't need to go to that club anymore, and you don't need to go watch that anymore, and you don't need to go to that concert anymore, and you don't need to. And so God was just shedding me of these things slowly but surely. But we're not all on the same journey. We're not all at the same place at the same time. So I would encourage you, as you mentor, as you interact, as you engage with other Christians, please don't assume that they're at the same place you are. Because I can assure you they're not. Okay? God works with us all at different times, in different ways. Just because you see something clearly doesn't mean other people see it as clearly as you. So please be compassionate and be balanced as you deal with your Christian brothers and sisters over whatever issue it might be. But whatever issues you might have, whatever disagreements you might have, I think God's looking down and saying, what spirit are they addressing those differences with? God's not looking down saying, oh, well, he's right and she's wrong and she's right. And He's looking down going, do they have my son's spirit? Do they have the spirit of Jesus, even though they might have differences? So be compassionate with those people who you might not see eye to eye with. Basketball was still a huge part of my life at this point in time. My nephew, who actually now is the head basketball coach at Whitworth, so coaching skipped a generation. So he's coaches over in Spokane right now. He was in high school at that point in time. I went back to get my teaching certification, so I was free in the afternoon, so I started helping my dad coach in the mid to late 90s. And I was a baptized Seventh-day Adventist Christian, and I was still going to basketball games on Friday and Saturday nights and living my basketball life with my family. And I rationalized it that, it's my family. I want to be with them. I want to witness to them, and I'm not going to throw this relationship with them. And so, but God had other plans. God worked with me on my time frame. Janelle had made a decision and stood up and made a decision not to go to basketball games on Friday nights. I was still not convinced. But Janelle didn't judge me. She didn't put the ultimatum down. her and her grandma and her family prayed for me, that I would see the light on that. Now, I'm not telling anybody what you shouldn't do on your Sabbath, or how you respond, or what you do. All I know is what God has convicted me of, and He didn't convict me of it overnight. I started coaching with my dad in 1995, and it wasn't until 1998, 6 years after I was baptized, that the Lord finally showed me that the environment of a basketball game, a high-intensity basketball game, wasn't where I should be. And that's a personal decision God showed me. I'm not going to judge somebody else based on, because I don't know how God's working in your life. I don't know how God is working in somebody else's life. But God showed me in due time, when it was time for me. And one of the hardest conversations I ever had to sit down with my mom and dad was when I sat down with my mom and dad in 1998 and said, I'm not going to be going to basketball games on Friday nights anymore. And you got to understand, this is a family that in the wintertime, games are on Fridays, little dribblers and practices on Saturdays. This is what we do. But I had to share with my parents at that point in time that this wasn't what God wanted me to do anymore. And the reason it stuck with me is because I had to figure it out on my own. I had to do it for the right reasons. I couldn't do it because she said, or he said, or they said. I had to understand it for myself. God had to convince me and convict me on my own. Then it made it real. So the timing had to be right. The timing had to be right. So pray for your loved ones. Talk about things with your loved ones, but do it in love. Do it with balance. Do understand that we're not all on the same page at the exact same time. We're all on a different journey with different backgrounds. Let the Holy Spirit do its job of convicting people. Our job isn't to convict people. Our job is to plant seeds. Our job is to pray for people. We're not in the business of convicting people. The Holy Spirit's job is to convict people. In the late 90s, Janelle and I said we want to raise our kids in the country. And where we were living in the Seattle area was not the country. And we decided to put that on the altar. Lord, we're willing. We had a couple things holding us back. I was coaching for my dad, and my nephew graduated in 1999 from high school. And so at that point in time, my obligations, I didn't have the same obligations. My sister really wanted me to help coach her son. So there were some family dynamics which were healthy, but still have a happy family. And so I ended that in 1999 when my nephew graduated from high school. And Janelle also was taking care of her grandmother in the Seattle area. I was the caregiver for her grandmother. And at that point in time, in June of 1999, both those two obligations went away, and we put it on God's altar. Lord, we want to move out of the Seattle area. We don't know where, we don't know what, but you do. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, we had put an offer on a house in Wenatchee. We went to Montana on a vacation, came back through Wenatchee, and we put an offer on a house up on Badger Mountain with a little bit of acreage, and owned a house in Wenatchee, but didn't have any jobs in Wenatchee. So we said, God, you opened up the doors to give us a place to live and to move out of the city. We know you're going to provide jobs over here. Well, by the grace of God, Janelle's job, she was able to telecommute from Wenatchee, I didn't get a job on this side, so I took a job in Seattle. So we were commuting back, living on this side, but commuting over to Seattle and Seattle area. Didn't have any kids at that point in time, and so we were able to do that. And then Little Faith came along in May of 2002. And at that point in time, I quit my job and became Mr. Mom. So I was Mr. Mom for 3.5 years, and Janelle was working at home, and God provides. Sometimes He doesn't provide a lot, but God provides enough. He provides our needs. He gives us what we need, maybe not in abundance, but hey, we have a roof over our head, and we have a happy family, and we have food in the fridge, and God provides.
Amen.
When we moved to Wenatchee, once Faith was 3.5, we had Selah in 2005, and at that point in time, it was time for me to probably look for a job. And so I started interviewing in the fall of 1989 or 2005.
It's okay, you're 50.
2005, fall of 2005. As much as I would like to still be Mr. Mom, it wasn't. God had other plans. And so I started interviewing, and we could kind of see Janelle's job waver a little bit with the whole telecommuting thing. And the first week of December in 2005, Janelle got laid off on a Wednesday at 10 o'clock in the morning. And I told Janelle, God will provide. And 28 hours later, I got a phone call and got hired at Washington Trust Bank. I had done banking in the mid-90s, and God had us with no income for 28 hours. So we honestly believe and know God has brought us to this place. We know God has provided. We know God has been with us all the way through. But what we've needed to do was put our full faith and trust in Him. And just put it and know and have the peace to know that God is in control. God is in charge. So she gets laid off. I get a job in 28 hours later, and we're fine. 4 months later, I get a call from Mark Wittes, who was the principal at Cascade Christian Academy at the time. And he asked me if I'd be interested in the math position at Cascade Christian Academy. Monty Saxby had been there for 20 years. I had interviewed at CCA back right when we moved to over here, and there was no positions available. And so he called. I got interviewed. I think I kind of had an in there because I golfed with all of the guys on the personnel committee. Jason Miller and Terry Mace and Mark Wittes, and so I was friends with those guys at church. And so I told them, I can't offer you what Monty Saxby was. Monty Saxby, from a math perspective, is way beyond my level. But I can only offer what I can offer, which is love of God. I'll love the kids, and I'll do what I can, to bring a strong Christian environment to the school. And by God's grace, I was hired and have been there for 9 years since. The doors God has opened for us all along the way, once I put my faith and trust in Him, we've seen His providence all the way through. And known He's been with us all the way through. And an event happened in 2010, May 18th of 2010, our 18th anniversary, May 17th, 2010, our 18th wedding anniversary, where we were at Olive Garden in East Wenatchee, and I had a series of transient ischemic attacks. I had a series of mini strokes, and we were eating dinner there, and the next thing we know, I'm at the hospital, hooked up, and we're trying to figure out what's wrong with me. And at that point in time in our lives, things are awesome. We're a happy family, and God can throw curveballs at us, can't He? Things out of nowhere, bumps in the road, curves. We have no idea when or where it's coming from. But we need to continue to trust God in all that we do, whatever our circumstances are. Come to find out, after some tests, I had a hole in my heart. We're all born with a hole in our heart, and in 85% of the cases, it all closes up. In 15% of the cases, it doesn't close. And in some cases, it gets bigger. And the doctors speculate that as I got older and I exercised less, the hole got bigger. And with that, a blood clot got through and blocked oxygen to my brain, and I had these TIAs. By the grace of God, I have no lasting effects to that. They weren't serious enough, but they were serious enough for us to get it fixed, but not serious enough to where there was any lasting effects. We had a procedure scheduled, and it was a experimental procedure scheduled, and we're driving over to Seattle, getting the to have the procedure done, and insurance calls us and says, we're not going to approve this surgery because the device they were using was used for a different purpose, and so insurance wasn't going to cover the $50,000 it was going to cost. And at that point in time, we were a little shook, and my family and my dad, well, we'll take out a loan and we'll pay for it. And Dad, God's in control. Let's slow down, take a step back, and see how God leads. So we took a step back and ended up going to the University of Washington and I had open heart surgery on November 2nd, 2010. I was at peace knowing God was in control. I knew God was in control, and there was a little ignorance on my part in terms of how serious the surgery was, which was good. My wife understood more than I did with her nursing background that it was a more serious procedure than I kind of went into it with some naive thoughts, but that's okay. God gave me a peace knowing I would make it out okay. November 2nd, 2010, come out of surgery, and I'm on the ventilator, and they're trying to get me to breathe on my own, and I'm having an incredible time trying to breathe on my own. I have a bad gag reflux. I really struggle with that. And they're trying to take the ventilator out of me and take me off of the medicine, the pain medicine, so that I can breathe on my own, and then up the pain. You nurses know what I'm talking about. And I was fighting it. I mean, and Janelle was leaving the room, going into asking people to pray. Some of you probably got phone calls from her. Pray for Kyle. He's struggling. I don't know what we're going to do. And right around that time, we had heard a song on 3APN, and prior to the surgery, and it was a song that became a piece for me, where we listened to it and we just loved the words of this song. And I was struggling, and Janelle asked me if she had her computer, if she could put this song on at that point in time. She asked the nursing, can we play the song? And they're like, do anything. She played this song for me, and instantaneously, my whole demeanor changed. A peace flowed through me, and I just melted. I quit fighting. I quit battling. And I gave it to God. And they were able to get me off the ventilator. But I had to give up the fight. I had to give it up. I couldn't do it. When I was trying to take the fight on, It was a battle. It was a struggle for me. I needed to give it up and give it to God. And this is the song that gave me total peace at that point in time.
We'll use channel 8, Anthony.
I wanna love you regardless if anyone else does. I wanna serve you even if I'm all alone. Though others forsake you, I wanna give you my faith and trust. Faithfully follow everywhere you go. I wanna love you regardless of anyone else does. I wanna serve you even if I'm all alone. Though others forsake you, I wanna give you my faith and trust. Faithfully follow everywhere you go. You are my sun in the morning, my star in the night. You're my manna from heaven, you're my fountain of life. You are my oil, you're my healing, my constant delight. You're my shepherd protecting me, you are my guiding light. Well, I wanna praise you regardless of anyone else does. I wanna thank you for the wonderful things you do. It doesn't matter if I am poor, if I am glad to give. Everything I have, I give to you. You are my sun in the morning, my star in the night. You're my manna from heaven, you're my fountain of life. You are my oil, you're my healing, my constant delight. You're my shepherd protecting me, you are my guiding light. Oh, some people say you're not reality. Some people say it's what they want to see. I see your power all around me, and I feel your presence deep inside of me. I wanna love you regardless if anyone else does. I wanna serve you even if I'm all alone. If others forsake you, I wanna give you my faith and trust. Faithfully follow everywhere you go. You are my sun in the morning, my star in the night. You're my manna from heaven, you're my fountain of life. You are my oil, you're my healing, my constant delight. You're my shepherd protecting me. You are my sun in the morning, my star in the night. You're my manna from heaven, you're my fountain of life. You are my oil, you're my healing, my constant delight. You're my shepherd protecting me, you are my guiding light. Well, I wanna love you regardless if anyone else does. I wanna serve you even if I'm all alone.
Are you willing to serve him if you're all alone? That song where it talks about, is he your light? Is he your oil? Is he your manna? Is he everything for you? I can only tell you, that day in the hospital, when I was struggling with life so badly, hearing the voices talking about Jesus like that melted me and gave me a peace that passes all understanding. I had no idea. All of a sudden it was just instantaneous peace and surrender. My challenge for you today is serve Him if you're even all alone. Trust Him with everything you are. Put all of your burdens at His feet, whether it's family or friends or work or whatever. Just put it all at His feet and let Him take those burdens, take those obstacles from you.